Rath Yatra yesterday, and then right after Rath Yatra in New York, they had like a 3-day festival. So the Southern Devotees stayed for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So right now up in New York, they're having a really big Kirtan Mela. So I know we have some congregation members that are there now. And then there's some of you that haven't come because you're just exhausted from yesterday's Rath Yatra. Yeah. It was a very blissful experience. How many people went up there yesterday? It's very, very wonderful. Even though they had one last year, it was kind of smaller. People weren't sure whether to go or not because of COVID. So I know some devotees went, but a lot of us didn't go last year. We didn't have a bus that went. So it's really been about 3 years since we saw so many devotees come together and chant. New York is that Rath Yatra, at least on the East Coast, where so many people assemble together. It's like a big family reunion. You see people from all over. A lot of the big Maharajas, sannyasis, wonderful devotees and sadhus, wonderful Vaishnavis. They come and give their association, you get a chance to chant with them. And I remember one point I was in the kirtan, and I couldn't believe it. There's Radhanath Maharaj right in front of me, and then Sachinandana Maharaj on the one side, Vaisheshika Prabhu on the other side. Mahavishnu Swami was right there playing his accordion. And it was just like, Kadambakana Maharaj was right there. And it was like, wow, this is what's called good fortune. Very rarely are you in that close proximity to so many saintly souls. So all today, we're also in the presence of another wonderful saintly soul. We have the good fortune, and it's my pleasure to introduce His Grace Kalakanta Prabhu. Kalakanta Prabhu, it's been actually several years kind of in the making. Back in 2019, right before COVID, 2020, right before COVID hit, I met him in Washington, D.C. at a conference, and he said he was going to plan on coming up here in June, and that got eliminated because of COVID. So it's been a couple of years, but it's June, and he's here 2 years later. Kalakanta Prabhu, he is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. He met the devotees in 1972 and took initiation from Srila Prabhupada in 1973. And in his younger years as a devotee, as a brahmachari, he served as the part of the DBT library party that traveled later on, he did some very important work with the ISKCON Foundation and helping change. He's a song, he's in Gainesville, Florida, and many of you may know it by the name of the Krishna House. It's become very famous because it's a dynamic aspect of preaching which has invigorated the idea of ashram life back into actually work in the same building.
temple. And notice a change or two. A beautiful new temple room, wonderful devotees, and as always, Bharati Hari, Jagannath Swami, Shri Gaurnitai. I'm very happy in their new home. So today I'd like to read from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 32. This is a verse that's relevant to us all who are practicing Krishna consciousness in this remote part of the world here in the West. Can you see? So chant responsibly. Mam hiparta vipashritya. Ye pishu papayonayaha. Striyo vaishyas tatha shudras. Sepi yanti param gatim. Mami parta vipashritya. Ye pishu papayonayaha. Striyo vaishyas tatha shudras. Sepi yanti param gatim. Please chant.
Mami Partha Vyapashritya Yepi Papayonaya
Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim
Mami Partha Vyapashritya Yepi Papayonaya Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Sudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim
Mami Partha Vyapashritya Yepi Suya Papayonaya Striyo Vaisya Tatha Sudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim Mami Partha Vyapashritya Yepi Suya Papayonaya Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Sudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim Mami Partha Vyapashritya Tepi Suya Papayonaya Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Sudras Tepi Yanti Param Gatim.
Send it up, please. We'll read these together. Can you scroll up a bit? Okay. Here we go. Mom of thee.
Mama Pi.
How about we read them together? He certainly, Partha, O son of Partha, Vyapashritya, particularly taking shelter. Yea, those who, Api, also, Shu, are, Papayonaya, born of lower family, Striya, woman, Vaishyas, mercantile people, Tatha, also, Shudra, lower tasmen Devi Ilene Yanti Go Param to the supreme Gatim destination. And translation together, please. O son of Prita.
O son of Prita.
O son of Prita.
O
Those who take shelter of me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. Report by Srila Prabhupada. It is clearly declared here by the Supreme Lord that in devotional service there is no distinction between lower and higher classes of people. In the material conception of life, there are such divisions, but for a person engaged in transcendental devotional service to the Lord, there are not. Everyone is eligible for the supreme destination. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.18, it is stated that even the lowest, or called the chandalas, dog-eaters, can be purified by association with a pure devotee. Therefore, devotional service and the guidance of the pure devotee are so strong that there is no discrimination between the lower and higher classes of men. Anyone can take to it. The most simple man, taking shelter of the pure devotee, can be purified by proper guidance. According to the different modes of material nature, men are classified in the mode of goodness, Brahmins, the mode of passion, Kshatriyas, or administrators, the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, Vaishyas, the merchants, and the mode of ignorance, Shudras, or workers. Those lower than them are called the Chandalas, and they are born in sinful families. Generally, the association of those born in sinful families is not accepted by the higher classes, but the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people of all the lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna. As indicated here by the word Vyapashrutya, one has to take shelter completely of Krishna. Then one can become much greater than great jnanis or yogis. Mani parta Vyapashrutya, yepisu papa yonaya, Sriyovashistatash te piyanti paramgatyam. O son of Prita, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. This verse clarifies that it is not just for Brahmins to become self-realized. Even Chandalas, the dog eater, this is a classification of people which we don't see so often in the West, but I had a good friend, Mal Krishna Maharaj, who when he was a young man went traveling to the Far East with his family. He went with his mother, who was very attached to the pet dog. So she brought the dog along, even on this long journey. So they went into a high-class restaurant there in Hong Kong. And at the door, the man said, sorry, no dogs. And he offered to take the dog for his owner. So she left the dog with the doorman, and they went in and ordered their meal. And it seemed to take a long time to come. Finally it came, and they ate and left. And then they went to collect their dog, and we thought you wanted us to serve you that dog before dinner. So there are such people in the world as this Chandala. And later, Tamal Krishna Maharaj went to China, and he introduced Krishna consciousness there. So even amongst this low class of people, he proved that anyone can become Krishna conscious. Our tradition, our Hare Krishna tradition, has a tremendous history in this regard, because traditionally in India, it is only the right of the Brahmins, the high class, to study the scriptures. It is only the right of the Brahmins, the high class, to do the rituals and perform the sacrifices. And only for such well-born people can the true imports of the Vedas be known. This is actually a misconception of life, because there are many, many examples given by Krishna himself about how love for him and spiritual realization can be attained by anyone. For example, once Lord Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends were tending their calves, going through the forest, and the boys had been out for a long time, so some of the younger boys said to Krishna, "We're very hungry. Can you please get us something to eat?" So Krishna, being omniscient, he said, "Oh, there are some Brahmins performing their sacrifices nearby. Why don't you go ask them? Go and tell them that Krishna and Balaram have sent us to get some food." So the boys obediently went, and the Brahmins were in the midst of their yajna, chanting their mantras, taking care of the rituals for the fire. And the boys relayed the message from Krishna. "We want some, we're very hungry, and although we understand that you're not supposed to interrupt a ritual to feed someone, the Shastra says that if it's young boys, it's okay. If it's children, you can do that." So they quoted Shastra to the Brahmins. The Brahmins, however, were very busy with their sacrifice, and they didn't even look at the boys. You know how it is if somebody ghosts you? Social media, you write and they don't write back as if you did not exist. The Brahmins ghosted the cowherd boys, and just with their noses in the air continued with their rituals. So the boys went back to Krishna empty-handed and told him what happened. Krishna smiled and said, "That's all right. If you are a beggar, you must be prepared to be disappointed sometimes. So why don't you instead go and ask the wives of these Brahmins?" So again, immediately the boys went past the Brahmins and went to their homes and gave the same message to their wives. They said, "Krishna and Balaram have sent us here. We're very, very hungry. Could you please give us something to eat?" So when the wives heard this, they immediately gathered everything in their homes and rushed out to bring prasad to Krishna. So when they arrived, Krishna looked at them and said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Krishna was very diplomatic like that. "Shouldn't you be at home with your husbands?" He thought they could have just sent the prasad. They didn't have to deliver it like DoorDash. But they brought it personally because they wanted to see Krishna. And when they were with Krishna, they didn't want to leave. They said, "Really, how can we go back to these husbands? These husbands who had no time for you. We just want to be with you." So Krishna said very patiently, "No, this adultery, this is terrible. You can't leave your husbands. So even if your husbands aren't the best husbands, stay with them anyway because that's your dharma, that's your duty." So then they went back, the boys were fed, but the Brahmins noticed what had happened. And then they reflected. We're doing this sacrifice for Vishnu, but here Vishnu himself has come to ask for prasad and we turn him away. How foolish we were. How foolish we were. To hell with our rituals. To hell with all our Vedic mantras. To hell with all of our practices. We had a chance to serve our beloved Lord and we missed it. But our wives took it. So in spite of all of our rituals and practices, we have no ecstatic love and they have so much. So in this way, the Brahmins became enlightened by their wives, who actually understood the purport of the Vedic literature. Krishna says, "Vedaista sarvairaham eva vedyo, vedantikrit veda vedeva cha." By all the Vedas, I am to be known because I compiled the Vedas. So the Brahmins are known for being ritualistic, knowing the Shastras, but they do not understand that Krishna is for everybody. In the Gita, Krishna says, "Vidya vinaya sampane brahmaniya vivashni, shune chaiva svapake cha, pandita samadarshina." Again, he uses this word, that the sage of possessive equal vision sees with genuine respect the cow, the elephant. And then Yudhishthira came back and said, "Gurudev, I saw a low-born man beating a cow." And I thought, okay, here's somebody who is inferior to me. But then I followed him home, and I looked in the window, and I saw that it was a Kadasi, and his wife was feeding him a Kadasi prasad, and he was on that no, he's honoring Ekadasi, he's my superior. So I couldn't find anybody who knew. So Dronacharya took a look around and then got back on the boat to sail to New York airport of demarcation. So at that point, having seen America, he wrote, "Oh my God, Krishna." So from these little groups of young people who rented houses, I remember the first temple I lived in was a rented house in suburban Portland, Oregon. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and there were 10 devotees crammed in there. And we have our kirtans, and pretty soon the city was coming saying, "What are you doing?" Gradually, bit by bit, these young groups of devotees raised money, and they went from rented to purchased properties, and they installed deities, and there were temples suddenly, magically, amazingly, even throughout these very sinful parts of the world. So Srila Prabhupada did this by seeing the soul in everyone and relating to it and appealing to it. Srila Prabhupada once met with Subhash, what's his name? I forgot his name. He was a very famous minister in Bengal. Kiran. No, Kiran. Anyway, join Krishna consciousness, then you were qualified to get married, adhikari. And then people looked up, oh, this is a married devotee. But after that cultural transformation, getting married became, oh, you can't make it as a brahmachari, you get married. You wear white, it's very lowly. So this is just one of many examples where an immature understanding of the Vedic heritage caused a great deal of confusion and division amongst these young devotees. So around that time, Srila Prabhupada left this world. And so we've kind of been stuck in this cultural limbo. Are we trying to embrace all facets of Eastern culture? Is that what it means to be Krishna conscious? Can you apply Krishna consciousness in various cultures? Is it one size fits all? Still, these debates are going on. In India, Krishna consciousness has become very popular. In the early days, it was very popular in America, and India was Timbuktu. If you had to go to India, it was austere, there was a lot of cultural uncertainty, and it was sort of like you were deployed to a difficult part of the world if you were sent to India. All the nectar was in America, but now India is moving like anything. There are massive temples going up, there are millions of people chanting, and Hare Krishna is very, very popular. Meanwhile, in America, we're kind of struggling in different ways. For one way, reaching the local populations. So some of the devotees in India feel, well, if you were just more strict about your Brahminical principles, you'd be flourishing like we are. But I question that, because in India, Krishna consciousness is popular. Why? Because it's conservative. You see so much infiltration from the West. The people in India love to see their tradition being upheld by these Hare Krishna people. So they value ISKCON very much. But in the West, it's a different thing. Again, the Indian diaspora, the wonderful devotees who have immigrated to India and come to our temples, they actually saved the temples in our movement in the West when in the confusing years after Prabhupada's departure. It was the congregations who stepped forward and kept the temples open. But meanwhile, the early sense of intercultural application that we had in those very early days, it has kind of dissipated. So we see that. Most of our congregations are of Indian heritage, and that is a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But Srila Prabhupada's mission was Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarni. Paschatya Desha means the Western countries. He is glorified by all of his followers for delivering the Western countries from the scourge of impersonalism and voidism. So how do we carry on Srila Prabhupada's mission, his ability to see Krishna in everyone and make it practical and prove it? Dronacharya Prabhu kindly mentioned, yes, in the last 10 or 15 years, my wife and I and our team have been working in Gainesville, Florida, and we have discovered that if you provide facilities for young people from all backgrounds, Western India, it doesn't matter, if you provide them facilities and supervision and care, they can take up bhakti just as readily as devotees did back in the 1960s. In the previous 10 years, before we opened our ashrams in Gainesville, there had been one devotee who had joined in 10 years. In the 10 years subsequent to that, there are over 300 devotees who joined. And Gainesville is a small town. It's a university town, not a particularly big city. But it happened because we just reinstated that practice of providing shelter. Ashram means shelter, not only physical shelter, but devotional shelter. Just like Srila Prabhupada, starting in New York, first he went out and gave lectures at various places. Then he realized that people need to come and hear regularly. And then the boys and girls who were coming regularly, he said, okay, here are places you can stay. He let some of them stay in the storefront. He let them use his shower so that they get more association and more regularly be with him, because he knew that's what it took. So this is the difference between East and West. Those who are fortunate and blessed to be born in Vedic heritage have a natural affinity. It's in the DNA, a natural ability to bow before the Lord, to chant the Lord's name, to be vegetarian, to be self-controlled, to be pursuant of a saintly life. But these tendencies are not at all native to the Western people. They have quite a different set of values. So while people can become very Krishna conscious at home, having that Indian heritage, for the Westerners, they need ashram. They need immersion. They need to live and work and be constantly in the association of devotees in order to make that cultural leap. But it's still possible to do. So after our success in Gainesville, having these wonderful young men and women, educated, bright, vibrant young men and women taking up Krishna consciousness, I've retired from that management, and I'm trying to share this wonderful experience in the fag end of my life with other temples that are interested. So that's the purpose of my visit here. The temple leaders have invited me to see if we can implement a Krishna house style ashram here in Philadelphia. What do you think about that idea? Would you like to see that? Yes. When seeing these young men and women coming to spiritual life is it's so amazing to see. It's almost like seeing a baby being born and taking its first steps. But it usually takes a month to 3 months, but at some point the light bulb goes on. And what they're reading in the books and experiencing becomes so deeply rooted that they will want to be devotees for life. And it's a beautiful thing. But as I said, it takes a village to raise a child. So these young men and women who will come here and join our Krishna House program here in Philadelphia, they will be very rough cut at first. They won't know what hand to eat with. They won't know so many etiquettes that are very familiar to us. So it takes that same degree of tolerance, of love and acceptance that Srila Prabhupada showed to make them feel, no, you're welcome. We want you here. We're glad you're here. That takes the support of the community. It takes a little investment of energy to provide the leadership and the care for these young men and women. There's 2 devotees who are visiting here today. I'd just like to introduce them, who are considering taking up this service for us here in Philadelphia. This is Anupama here, and his good wife, Mani Manjuri, back, and they are visiting from New York and discussing this possibility. Would you like to see them come and join us here? So will you please give them your blessings, your encouragement? Srila Prabhupada once visited Hong Kong, and his disciple Burijan Prabhu was there, trying very diligently to reach the local audience, but primarily reaching Sindhi businessmen who are based there. So for Srila Prabhupada's visit, the businessmen got together, they rented the penthouse at the Hilton in Hong Kong, very prestigious location. They all gathered, nicely dressed, and Srila Prabhupada came and began giving a very interesting talk, a very unusual talk. He said, most people feel that it was Mahatma Gandhi who drove the British out of India. But in fact, it was Subhas Chandra Bose. Subhas Chandra Bose made a deal with Hitler and Tojo, the Japanese leader, that any of the Indian recruits for the British Army who defected could join a new Indian nationalist army in Singapore that would help drive out the British from India. Burijan was rather surprised. He was expecting a lecture on Bhagavad Gita. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi is very dear to most people from India. Once I was in North Carolina, and the community there was opening a new Hindu temple. And they had an election for who will be the deity in our temple. So Krishna got 64 votes, Ganesh got 36 votes, Shiva got 16 votes, and Mahatma Gandhi got 2 votes. So Burijan was reflecting, why is Prabhupada talking like this? And then he had an idea. So he went to Srila Prabhupada and asked, Prabhupada, were you saying to these people that just as Subhas Chandra Bose recruited the defectors from the Indian Army to help him with his mission, that you also want to recruit the Indian diaspora to help you with your mission for spreading Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada said, yes, you have understood my point. He wanted the Indian people, the expatriates, to be soldiers in his armies for spreading Krishna consciousness. So how can we do that? It is done very, very easily just by participating in the temple and by recognizing that this is the unique thing about the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, isn't it? There are so many cultural and religious organizations catering to the Hindu communities. ISKCON was the first in most cities, like Philadelphia, but now there's so many. But what makes ISKCON unique is ISKCON. It is international. It is actually capable of seeing beyond the bodily concept of life and appealing to a wide swath of people. So that is possible only in this ISKCON. And by the combined effort of the community, supporting the temple, encouraging the preachers, facilitating the young men and women who are just stumbling in from Maya with no idea about how to practice Vedic culture, giving them a chance to have an educational experience that's so transformative, that has touched so many lives. That is how we can cooperatively move together to spread this movement and to serve Srila Prabhupada. So I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce Krishna House here in Philadelphia. Thanks to all the leaders who invited me and devotees who are thinking about taking part. It has absolutely been a mystical, magical experience to see all these young lives being changed. And I've discovered that Krishna consciousness is just as viable for the local populations today as it was in the 60s and 70s. You just have to give the shelter and love and affection that Srila Prabhupada gave. My dear godbrother Sridhar Maharaj was passing away some years ago. Anyone know Sridhar Maharaj? He's called the Jolly Swami. Yes, he had a liver cancer, and it caused his belly to swell. And the day before he died, he was lying on his bed in Mayapur. And then godbrother Indradumna Maharaj came in to see him. He looked up at him and he said, "It's a boy." I called him not long before he passed away. I said, "Maharaj, do you have any final instructions for me?" He said, "Try to give the love that Srila Prabhupada gave to you to others." So that has been the guiding principle in my life ever since. And I know of no better vehicle to do it than the Krishna House Ashram program. So please allow me to share this love with you to the best of my ability, and you share with others. And this is the real fulfillment. Vedasya Savaram Eva Vedo. By all the Vedas, it is Krishna to be known. And one who knows Krishna knows everything. So Sarvavid Vijnati Krishna is available regardless of our birth. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Are there any reflections, comments? We have a couple of minutes. Any questions? David, cool.
It's good to recognize that our job compared to Prabhupada's job is very minimal. He worked so hard to get us and put up with so much, not only us in the beginning, but for a dozen years or so with us. And we should all embrace what we've got. My grandmother's, I was one of 7 boys, and my grandmother's favorite saying was, "There but for the grace of God, go I." So we should take that to heart and be grateful for what we have.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have so much facility now to offer to people. Yes, and mature devotees also, mature realizations. Thank you. Other comments? Anything else? All right. Just Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Pooja. So it was really wonderful session today. Hare Krishna. Yeah, myself Ramsyam Das. So it was really wonderful session today, and we learned, your, meetings means your, relations with Prabhupada as well. You mentioned many things, and like the other things about the gopis, Brahmana wife, and everything. I'm just curious to know about your first meeting with the Srila Prabhupada and how, you get into contact with the Krishna consciousness, and how after the first meeting, what kind of interaction you had and excitement you had to join the Krishna consciousness. That will motivate us more and more to be in this path.
Yeah, this won't take long because I had a little interaction. When I met the devotees and started reading Srila Prabhupada's books, then I came to the temple. And when I had Malpuras at the temple, I said, "Can I join?" So in those days, everybody hankered to be with Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Krishna consciousness is wonderful, but if we could be personally with Srila Prabhupada, that would be the best. And we would get to see Prabhupada in lectures, and sometimes morning walk, and a darshan. I got to see him maybe 40 or 50 times. But on one occasion, my godbrother was cooking for Prabhupada. Said, "Would you like to help?" I said, "Sure." And I made sandesh. He said, "Would you like to offer Prabhupada's plate?" I said, "Thank you, yes. Finally, I'm going to get to do personal service for my guru." So I brought in the plate. Prabhupada just looked at me. He said nothing. And I offered sadhana, and I left. Waited outside. When he rings the bell, that meant he's ready for the plate to be taken. So I came in, took the plate. He looked at me. He said nothing. Next day he said to this cook, why are so many men staying back from book distribution to cook for me? So for me, the great joy in spiritual life was to personally serve. But for him, what he really wanted was for me to serve in another way. So I learned from that the Vapu association, the physical association, is not really what's important. And just as in the Ramanuja Sampradaya in India, all of the followers of Ramanuja consider themselves followers of Ramanuja. They're initiated by different current gurus, but they consider them followers of Ramanuja. So in the same way in our Sangha, we're all followers of Srila Prabhupada. And the fact that he has left this world maybe before most of us have a chance to see him does not in any way impede our knowing him. In fact, it's easier to know Srila Prabhupada now than it was back then, because you have all of his books in button print, you have all these lectures,
Right.
all the memories of personal association. So, in the biography, what is speak of the biographies?
Yeah, Vedanta.
So I encourage you to think of yourself as Prabhupada's follower, and you may be initiated by this person or that person. That's an expression of submission to Srila Prabhupada. But it's Srila Prabhupada who's the preeminent Siksha Guru for us all.
Yeah, Param.
Yeah, and we are not constrained by the fact that he's physically not present.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. All right, so unless
What does a typical day in the Krishna house look like?
we get up at 1:30 in the morning. No.
4:30.
We actually have adjusted the schedule so that it's easy for people to get started. It's something that kind of, if people can just get started, then they discover how fun it is. So, Mangalarti is shifted back till 6 a.m. And the students commit that they're going to come to the morning program 5 days a week. Weekends are off. So 6 a.m. Mangalarti, then an hour for japa. They have to chant a minimum of 8 rounds to stay in the ashram. 7:30 Guru Puja, 7:45 Bhagavatam class, and then breakfast 8:30, and then they go to school or go to work or go into their service for the day. In the evening, again, gather and attend Bhagavad Gita class, have kirtan, and then take rest. So that's pretty much the routine. It is, they do a minimum of 4 hours a day of service if they're living in the ashram full time, or they pay some tuition if they're going to school or working. And then we take excursions, we take trips to the parks or hikes, to other temples, people's homes. And there's a great bond of love that develops amongst the students in the ashram. A great camaraderie. And their shared experiences of Krishna consciousness just provide this element of fellowship that's needed, that every young person needs. Every young person needs friends, they need a place to stay, and they need meals. You know, when they move out of mommy and daddy's house, then these are the 3 things that are really important, essential. We can provide those simple things, and then their most basic needs are met, and they are readily and freely able to study Srila Prabhupada's books. So that's what a typical day looks like. If you get the Krishna house going here in Philadelphia, you'll see on Sundays, you'll see many enthusiastic young boys and girls chanting. They'll be serving prasadam, they'll help prepare prasadam. But mostly it's Monday through Friday in the mornings where you can really see the spiritual growth. So anyone who's interested to see, once it's rolling, you can attend a morning program and see for yourself. You can also invite the students to your home and maybe cook something for them. Our Houston Krishna House, the congregation loves to make lunch. Some of the members make lunch for the students once a week. It's a very sweet reciprocation. All right?
How many Krishna houses are there?
There are 5 now. Gainesville and Grand Rapids, Michigan, Toronto, New York, and Houston. And others interested. You can have a wonderful Krishna house here with the rooms that you have and space, and the amazing ways these young men and women will contribute will lift everything up. All right? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Ki Jai.
Thank you so much, Kalikanta Prabhu, for that wonderful talk. Very inspiring, very informative. And with your help and with your blessings, we hope to be able to serve Srila Prabhupada and inspire, enthuse, and serve as many young boys and girls as you can to take the Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Anybody wants to speak to Kalakanta Prabhu, talk to him, he'll be available after this class. Also, we'll be giving the Srimad Bhagavatam class tomorrow morning. Those that want to come to the temple, you can come to the temple and hear the class. But those that are, you can also access it on Zoom. A lot of you are accustomed now to our Zoom classes, so we'll be on Zoom starting at 7:50 tomorrow morning. So before we have the Arti and Kirtan, Mother Shobharaya, she has an announcement regarding the Sunday school year-end picnic.
Hare Krishna, everybody. So the picnic is going to be on June 25th. We will have it in Delaware's Nums Pond State Park. We'll go boating in the morning, 10 to 10:30 maybe, and then Kirtan Mela at Krishna Village is on the same day. So we are going to make it convenient for you to come to our Panihati picnic and also go to Kirtan Mela. And another important thing, I see a lot of kids here today, so I'm really happy. We are in the process of designing the t-shirt. We give t-shirts to the Sunday school kids. So it's almost ready. If you could just meet me outside and give me your kids' sizes. And if anybody else in the congregation wants t-shirts, we can order them for you also. For the past couple of years, we've not had t-shirts. So this year we decided that it's, Narasimhadev has protected us throughout this difficult period. So we want to offer our gratitude to Narasimhadev and also pray to him to keep us safe going forward. So it's a beautiful t-shirt that Malati has designed. He's in the process of finishing up. So please let me know what sizes, how many you want, and so forth. So, and please keep June 25th free. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mother Shobharaya. Also, we just got done the New York Rath Yatra, but there's many other local Rath Yatras that are going to be going on and we can support. Starting July 2nd is the Atlantic City Rath Yatra. And Atlantic City Rath Yatra is really, really amazing. It's really far out because you got the casinos on one side and you got the beach on the other side, and the devotees are going right down the boardwalk. So it's like, and in order to get to the beach, you got to cross the devotees. In order to get to the casino from the beach, you got to cross the devotees. It's actually the most direct interactive you can make. Because most of we were going down Fifth Avenue yesterday, where but the people got on the sidewalks, they could hear, but they weren't. It was kind of like a spectacle. It was like they were observing. But in Atlantic City, you're right there with the people. I mean, it's like you're touching them as they're going by. So it's promoted by Central Jersey, but it's actually closer to us to actually get there than Central Jersey. So please come out and support that. And at the end, as I've never been to Jagannath Puri, but as I heard, it's right on the beach there. You can actually go swimming. The devotees go swimming afterwards. So more to come. It's a later start. It's 2:00, so you don't have to beat the shore traffic on Saturday morning. And then the following week in Harrisburg, another one of our sister temples, July 9th. That starts at 12:00. So put that on your calendar. In the newsletter, we will put out the exact information, dates, or the date is there, but the exact start location. Okay, thank you. So the weather cleared up, very, very, very good. This morning we had a downpour. It was really coming down. I didn't think we'd be able to serve and honor Prashadam outside, but it looks like we'll be able to. So after Kirtan and Arti, we'll have our Prashad outside. Hare Krishna.